Hey guys, so in today's video, I want to talk through our budgeting process as well as give you a budget update. So if you are subscribed to my channel, you will know that every month I will give you a budget update in terms of what happened the previous month, how we ended up doing with our budget, and then setting the budget for the following month. But what I thought would be worth doing is showing you our budgeting process, because I think especially if you are listening to this in real time, it's the beginning of the year and you're probably getting ready or hyped up to start budgeting and sticking to your budget and all of that good stuff, but you may be a bit confused in terms of how you can actually start the budgeting process. So I thought it was worth doing a video on this and just sharing what we typically do. Again, you don't have to do it exactly like us, but I thought it would be good to show you an example so that hopefully that can provide you with some inspiration when you're doing your own budget. So let me walk through our entire budgeting process and we'll do a budget update at the same time. Okay, so first of all, it's worth mentioning that we typically will budget monthly. So my husband gets paid monthly, I actually get paid weekly, but we tend to do a monthly budget, and the reason being is just mainly because it's a little bit easier for us. Our bills tend to come out once a month anyway, so for us it makes sense to just do a monthly budget. But essentially what I'm going to do is walk through our monthly budget and what we typically do. So first of all, before we start doing our budget, one of the biggest things that I will typically do is update our net worth statement. Now, if you don't know what a net worth statement is, it's basically your assets minus your liabilities. So your assets will be things that you own. So for example, cash, if you've got any investments or any savings or anything like that, and your liabilities are going to be things that you owe. So typically you may be owing something to a creditor. So you might have credit card debt as an example, you may have financed your car, so you've got a car loan, or you may have any other personal loans. So anything like that would be considered a liability. And the reason why I will do this at the beginning of the month during our budgeting process is just because I think it's good to kind of track our progress and see how well we're doing financially. And I think it helps with motivation when it comes to setting your budget, because essentially what you're trying to do is build as many assets as possible. So when you're just kind of looking at your net worth, you're kind of figuring out, actually, do we want to be saving a lot more, or do we want to be investing a lot more, or is everything fine and we still want to keep the same progress? And if you do like the look of this net worth template, this is also something that you can access. So not only does it come with the net worth statement, it comes with a sinking funds calculator, and then it actually includes a monthly budget template, or you can choose the weekly budget template, obviously depending on how you get paid. So I'll make sure to link those in the description below for you if you are interested in accessing this template. Now, I have blurred out the numbers because when it comes to our net worth, it's not just my own personal finances, so not just my savings and investments, but it includes my husband as well. If you've been subscribed to my channel for a while, you will know that I did actually used to share my net worth numbers, so you can of course check those videos out if you want to. They're definitely still on my channel, but since I've been married, that is something that we've decided to keep private because it's not just my money anymore. So I would definitely recommend doing a net worth statement if you haven't done it before. We tend to do it monthly, so we will do it at the same time as our budget, but you know, you can do it anytime that you want, to be honest. So that is the first thing we will do when it comes to our budgeting process. Okay, so next up, what I will do is, depending on the time of year, I will think about our sinking funds. Now, in terms of what sinking funds are, these are just basically upcoming expenses that you kind of want to just save up for over time, because they're not typically your monthly or your weekly expenses. So as an example, we have a sinking fund for car maintenance. So whenever we have to renew our insurance, for example, or if we need to go for an MOT, or we need to get road coverage, we'll typically pay for that once a year. And so because of that, we will set money aside each month to save for that particular expense, so that by the time that we have to pay for it, it doesn't have to come out of our monthly income that particular month. We would already have money set aside for it, and so we'll just have like a pot ready to use for that expense. And so because I've been budgeting for a few years, I tend to already know what our sinking funds are likely to be anyway, and so I will usually set up our sinking funds maybe once or twice a year. But there are times where we will then think, oh, actually there's another sinking fund that we probably want to start thinking about. So if I just look through here, I have a sinking funds calculator that just kind of includes all the sinking funds that we have. So we've got one for car maintenance, as I mentioned, we've also got a sinking fund for clothes, we've also got one for presents, and also we've got just random random other things like the dentist, for example. If you do want to learn more about sinking funds in a bit more detail, I do have a video on that already, so I'll make sure it's linked up here for you and in the description below. Okay, so now we actually go on to the budget. Now again, before we set the budget, sometimes what we will typically do is just have a look at our spending and see how we did last month when it comes to our spending. And I feel like a lot of people tend to do this, but they don't really know why they track their spending. Like, they just track their spending because they think they're just supposed to track their spending. The biggest reason why we typically track our spending is because it is going to help us dictate what the next month's budget should be like. So when we do have a budget, we will of course include our income, and then we will also include any savings or investments that we want to set aside. We will also have a section for essential bills. So these are bills that basically need to be paid for, or they're just really essential. And then we also have a category for just general spending, and it is the general spending part that we track. So let's use December as an example, and I'm gonna also do a budget update and track how we actually did for the month of December, and then you can see how we have done our budget for the month of January. Okay, so in the month of December, we had set a budget for transport, so that would include any public transport or petrol, and we had set a budget for £120, but for the month of December we ended up spending £116, and that was probably because we partly went on holiday that month, and obviously because of the Christmas period we didn't have to travel to work or anything like that. And so usually what I will do is I will update the spreadsheet, and I typically do this in my budget update videos. So if you haven't seen any of my other budgeting videos, definitely just kind of look through them and check them out, or you can actually check out last month's budgeting update to see how we had actually set the budget. So I'll make sure it's linked in the description below for you. So that was transport. Next up was groceries. So we originally had a budget of about £170 for the month, but with groceries we went slightly over. We actually ended up spending £175 for the month, and I do feel like food prices had increased again in December. I don't know if it's just me. If you feel like it has increased, definitely let me know in the comments, but I feel like it did. And so when we then do our budget for January, you'll see how our budget has slightly tweaked just because we've had a look at our spending and we've seen how much we're spending on groceries. But £175 I don't think is too bad considering it was just £5 over. Then next up, when it came to toiletries, we did have an original budget of £35, so that's how much we thought we were going to spend. We definitely went over on toiletries, so you will also see on January that we have tweaked that budget too. So with toiletries we ended up spending £48 instead of £38. And then we also had our individual spending, so we both get £100 each, and that's to spend on anything and everything. If you're subscribed to my channel, you know that I always spend my £100 every single month, so yeah, there's always no surprise there. And typically my husband doesn't spend it because he likes to save money. But that was essentially our spending. And then when it came to personal care, we had a budget of £52 and we ended up spending £50 instead, so just £2 less than the original budget. Then with date night we also had a budget for £70 and we ended up spending £52, so we didn't spend as much on date night. And then my gym membership was £21.99. that is a direct debit, so that just comes out every single month anyway. The same with Disney Plus, that is also a direct debit. Miscellaneous, we had a budget of £35, but we ended up spending a bit more and we spent £43 instead. And then with my husband's rugby games, we also set a budget for £30, and that is exactly what he ended up using. And the rest of the money, this is any loose change we typically have, that is put into our pennies jar. And the reason why we kind of do this is because we kind of use a zero-based budget method, and that essentially just means that you give every penny or cent a name. So you're basically categorizing every single pound or dollar in your budget. Now you definitely do not need to do this. I have clients who have decided to even use the cash envelope system, for example, where you literally just categorize everything and use cash and put them in envelopes. So the budgeting method doesn't really matter, but this is essentially just how we like to budget, and for us it just makes sense because I also like spreadsheets too. So as you can see from our budget, we ended up going over slightly by £2, which I think considering for December is definitely not bad at all. But what we'll do is just that for next month's month's budget, we'll just budget with £2 less. So that is typically how we will track our spending. And again, as I mentioned, we'll then use that to guide us for next month's budget. So let's have a look at how we're setting our budget for the month of January. Okay, so again, when we're setting the January budget, what we will typically do is first include whether we have overspent or underspent. So in this case, for example, we have overspent by £2, so it means we have £2 less to budget. And then we will also add in our total income. So we will add income from my husband's salary, my salary. Sometimes we may include like my business, or if we've got any side hustles, we may include that in the income. We haven't done that for this month, but for this month, one thing we have included is our sinking funds pot. So last year we actually had a dedicated pot, so we had savings already set aside for our sinking funds, and we decided to just take a little bit every month and distribute what our sinking fund should be. So distribute the money that we want to put towards our car maintenance, rugby, the dentist, and all of that stuff. And so within that pot we had £100 dedicated for our sinking funds. Now this year will be slightly different going forwards because our sinking funds will just come out directly from our salaries, but since we had a pot from last year and we still had £100 left over, we've decided to use that for the month of January. So you will see how we have allocated our sinking funds later on in the video. So after that, what we will do is allocate what we want to add towards our savings and investments. So as you can see, this month we have decided to put £1,050 into our own savings, and that's saving up for a house deposit. And then we have also added £50 each into our investments as well. So our total is £1,150, which is going purely towards our savings and investments. And the reason why I don't typically track this or like our essential bills or anything is because once we have set the budget, that money is paid out. Like as soon as we get paid, the money is transferred into our savings, into our investments. So there's not really a point in tracking it because the money is taken out automatically anyway. And then after that, I will include our essential bills. So for us, our essential bills don't typically change each month anyway. They're mainly direct debits or standing orders. So it's literally a copy and paste from each month. The only thing that may typically change is our giving, for example, or our gas and electricity bills. And you'll see from this month's budget, that slightly changed too. So in terms of our essential bills, we are currently paying £1,100 a month for rent. We've got another £47.75 going towards our water bill. Our electricity and gas has slightly increased, so we're currently paying £50.96 on top of what the government is, you know, giving everyone, the £66. And then we've also got council tax, which is £129 a month. Broadband is £31 a month. We've got my husband's iCloud, which is £158 a month. And then we've also got our SIM contracts as well. So for my husband's phone, it is £12 a month. And for my phone, it is £10 a month. And if you're ever interested in what SIM contract we use Voxy. So if you are UK based and you want to check it out, I will leave a link in the description below for you. And then after that, we've got our tithes, charity and giving. So you may be wondering, like, why do we have it in our essential bills category? For us, it's just to remind us that when it comes to giving, it is essential, and also as people of faith, it's just a good reminder that we are stewards of this money, and essentially we believe it's God's money, not ours. So for us, we will then also allocate our tithes, charity and giving. I have blocked that out for privacy reasons, but when it comes to our essential bills, that is typically what we will include. And then, as I mentioned, when it comes to sinking funds, we will also allocate money for that as well. So if we have a look, we have got £50 going for our car maintenance. We've got another £10 we are saving for our dentist appointments, another £10 going towards my husband's rugby club, another £10 going towards a pot for clothes, another £25 going towards a pot for presents. We have slightly increased the presents fund because we know that there's a few presents that we're going to need to buy, and then another £10 going towards our skincare. Also, you can see actually at the bottom, we do have a sinking fund for electricity and gas, and the only reason why we've done that is obviously because the government is paying for part of our bills. We have decided to keep some of that money because we know that come April, electricity and gas is probably going to increase. So we want to have just a pot of money just set aside just in case it increases dramatically and we just want to pay some of it off. So that essentially is our sinking funds for the month of January, and that comes to £170. And so once we've done the budget for savings, essential bills, and also our sinking funds, we will then move on to the spending category. So this is literally just any general spending for the month. And typically when it comes to our spending, again, it's quite similar to the previous months anyway. So what I will usually do is just kind of copy and paste what we did last month, but then make any necessary changes, or I would add anything that we think may be coming up for the month. So as you can see from our spending, again, we have budgeted £120 for our transport, so we've decided to keep the same budget. For groceries, we did slightly increase it to £180, and that's partly because we have a couple more days to budget for in January, because January is a bit of a longer month based on when we get paid. But also, since we spent a bit more in December on food, I just wanted to make sure that hopefully £180 should be enough. So we'll see, but that's what we've budgeted. And then we've also budgeted £40 for toiletries. So last month we budgeted, I think, 35, and obviously we went over. So this month we decided to increase that slightly to about £40. We've also got our £100 spending money, as I've mentioned before. Personal care, we budgeted for £50, and that's basically what we spent last month. Our date night, we've kept that the same at £70. And then we've also got our gym membership, which again is another direct debit, so that's £21.99, and Disney Plus is also another direct debit, so that's £7.99. Miscellaneous, we have decided to keep that at £35. My husband's rugby is £45 because he's going to be playing more games this month, and the rest of the money, we had about £3 left to budget, and so we just decided to add that onto our pennies jar, which again is just any kind of loose change. We've got like a separate pot for it. And so this whole process will typically take me about 10 minutes to do each month, so I definitely don't think it's bad, but just know that if this is your first time budgeting, then it probably will take longer than 10 minutes. Now, if you are someone who has decided that you really want to take budgeting a lot more seriously, but you kind of need more help or support in terms of how to actually set up your budget and start the budgeting process, or even just know how to stick to your budget consistently, then this is definitely something I can help you with, because what I've been able to do is actually help women not only start their budget from scratch, but I've also been able to have a look at their budget and figure out where they're actually going wrong, so that when they tweak it, they're able to stick to their budget consistently, whether they use a budget template like this or they have a completely different budgeting method. So if you feel like you would like my help and support, what you can do is just book a free sales call with me, and that's just to find out more about one-on-one coaching and how I can actually help you with your finances. So do check that out if you haven't already. I'll make sure it's linked up here for you and in the description below. So that is essentially my entire budgeting process, and as I mentioned before, you do not need to do it exactly like this, but I'm just hoping that if you've maybe never started a budget before, or maybe you've even had a budget but things just don't seem to be working very well, I'm hoping that this kind of provides you inspiration into thinking how you can maybe make your budget a bit better, or it could just give you some tips in terms of how to get started with your own budget. So hopefully you did find this useful. I do post every Tuesday, so if you would like to know more, then feel free to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next week.